Aloha, my friends. Welcome back to the Surfer's Library. I'm Billy Jack, your guide through the pages of surf history, culture, and legend. Today I'll be reading from a book I recently picked up called The Way of the Surfer, Living It, 1935 to Tomorrow, by our good friend Drew Kampion. And honestly, I don't know how this one wasn't already on my bookshelf. I'm a little embarrassed as it's a great book. It profiles 13 incredible names from surf history. Woody Brown, John Severson, Dick Brewer, Nat Young, Billy Hamilton, Rolf Aurness, Gerry Lopez, Tom Curren, Lisa Anderson, Kelly Slater, and Titus Kinimaka. Each chapter looks at the surfers' past accomplishments, but it also shares what they were up to more recently. The book was published back in 2003, so unfortunately a few of the surfers featured are no longer with us, which to me somehow makes these stories even more special. Today's story is titled John Severson, Inventing Surf Culture, all about the guy who created the Bible of our sport, Surfer Magazine. Before surf magazines, surf films, and the whole surf lifestyle were even a thing, John was out there building it from scratch. This chapter tells the story of how one surfer with a camera helped shape the look, feel, and mythology of modern surfing. Let's paddle out. John Severson, Inventing Surf Culture. The sun slips behind the Hawaiian island of Molokai, spilling a jeweled gore of red sand oranges across the channel, smearing streaks of cloud with tropic fire. Swells blacken and lift near the corners of the cove at Honokeana as the classic beach house on the lava point is warmed by the dying of another Maui day. Below the house, an angulo longboard sits in the grass, still beaded with the salted pearls of an afternoon session. A sizable wooden deck is a grand platform from which to view all of this. Inside the house, a large man with big hands and feet and lively blue eyes sits beneath a painting of a deserted hillside golf green with perfect waves wrapping into Honolulu Bay below. He wears shorts and a bright Hawaiian shirt and appears to be reading the novel Gidget Must Die. Perched in the loft above, a bronze Buddha casts a meditative calm down on bamboo furniture, woven rattan floor mats, shell-encrusted lampshades, an evocative miscellany of Hawaiiana. The place exudes the aesthetics of surf art incarnate. Severson came here to Maui back in the early 1970s. He built this house 25 years ago. Framed with eucalyptus poles, sheathed in shingles, it's as perfect in this setting as the grass shacks and pole houses of his painted tropical fantasies. The whimsical curves and angles of the Polynesian-style roof, the hobbit hole nuances of the windows, the casual but graceful use of space, the balanced feng shui of set and setting, all of this reflects Severson's prodigious creative gifts and his restless imagination. John Hugh Severson was born in Los Angeles, California, in December of 1933. His father worked in the rationing-encumbered service station industry until he bought his own station in San Clemente and moved his family to the beach in the fall of '45. Severson was stand-up surfing by the time he was 14, and then he saw a copy of Dr. John Ball's 1946 book, California Surf Writing, and his fingers started to fidget. There was a little picture of a letter a guy had written during the war back to the Santa Cruz guys, and he drew a picture of a wave or a surfer or something. That really struck me, and I started cartooning. In 1951, Severson got a Malibu chip surfboard, a Joe Quigg design that felt so light and tippy that he and younger brother Jimmy never thought they'd be able to ride it. About this time, Severson fell under the influence of so-called Pasadena Playboys, a bunch of partiers who would show up in San Clemente in the summer. They'd come down and play two-man volleyball, Severson tells me, and they'd bring their little sisters. It was just perfect. They opened new worlds for us. Severson was a high school athlete, loved baseball especially, and pitched until his arm blew out. A teacher suggested alternatives: band, the school paper, woodblock prints, art, and more. He excelled in all. He pumped gas in winter and worked as a lifeguard in summer. Graduated, got an associate's degree from Orange Coast College, went inland to California State University, Chico, to earn a degree in art education, then started working on his master's at California State University, Long Beach in the fall of '55. There he surfed, drank beer, sang barbershop, and got into a painting class taught by Dr. John Olson, who told Severson to paint what you have fun doing. So I started to picture the pier, Severson tells me. I'm very tight and linear. I'm palette knife painting because I'm a little fearful of laying out my brushwork in front of the whole painting class. Olson was enthused by the subject matter, but his classmates weren't. They just didn't dig it, but I couldn't be budged. Severson painted another one and took it to a gallery in Laguna Beach, where it sold right away for $35. Encouraged, he painted another, a surf car with these funky little guys, boards loaded on top, and the faint representation of a wave. You could almost feel him boogieing along, and it sold within a week for $150. Severson found himself in a wonderful dream. Being able to merge his creative spirit with his predilection for surfing and his love of waves was a revelation. At school, he attacked the canvas with every sort of experiment, looking for the language that would best communicate a choice slice of Southern California life that no one seemed to notice or appreciate. The result was Seal Beach Locals, his first bona fide surf culture painting. Fittingly, he traded it for a new surfboard. Severson earned his master's, scored a cherry teaching job, rented a little place in South Laguna, and carved a tiki to appease the ocean gods. Obligingly, the surf pumped all through that summer of '56, and Severson steamed into the school year with a big grin on his face, until one day in the mailbox, greetings, drop everything and come with us. Welcomed into the U.S. Army, he was sent to Colorado for basic training, where he got frostbite and was assigned indoors. They set me up in a studio painting and doing chain of command charts during basic training. I was not a popular soldier. Moved to Georgia to learn teletyping and Morse code, his permanent assignments alternated between Germany and Hawaii. Some guy up the list flunked out, and that's how Severson wound up in Honolulu in the spring of '57. This was a lucky man. Stationed at Schofield Barracks, Severson was tasked with hand-tinting wall-sized topographical maps of Oahu in a beautiful open-air office. He rented a $15 room in Waikiki, painted in the evenings, and sold his works on the sidewalk in front of the Royal Hawaiian Hotel. The situation became a springboard for his career as a lifelong surfer and the single most important voice in the creation of 20th century surf culture. In Hawaii, he met the world's best surfers and surfed the world's best surf spots, and then he decided on his next creative project, a film. Joe Quigg had moved to Honolulu in '53. I first met John when I walked up and down Kalakaua, he recalls. There was a hedge in front of the Moana Hotel, and he'd sit there and sketch scenes of Waikiki and stuff, and I'd stop and chat. I loved him right from the start because his work was happy and colorful. Then he got a movie camera and made a movie, and to my mind, that movie was a turning point in surfing. Big wave surfer Fred Van Dyke was also impressed. John and his friend Ed Voss did things on the beach. They picked up litter, built designs in the sand, made sculptures of found objects. This was unique at the time, especially at Haleiwa Beach, where the locals didn't appreciate outsiders. One time, John and his friends made a Christmas tree out of driftwood with ornaments of junk. Simple, but a creation in itself. John was certainly not rich at the time, but I think he enjoyed basking in being a poor person. He had the intellect and artistic creativity, but he seemed to enjoy groveling in the surfer image. Severson painted his car, transforming it into rolling surf art. As he traveled around Oahu checking the different surf spots, he filmed the action with an old 16mm Keystone movie camera. He was there when the big swell of January '58 hit, ready with a roll and a third of film. On the morning of the big day, Severson paddled out at Makaha with Buzzy Trent, had one great 25-foot point-to-bowl ride with Trent, then dropped into a monster 35-footer, got drilled, saw the face of God, and blacked out several times before he could get a breath. He almost didn't survive, but as soon as he made it to the beach, he set up his camera. Severson had a ball creating his first surf flick, framing its episodes in simple animations and hand-lettered titles, selecting the music. He called it Surf. It premiered at Honolulu's Roosevelt High School with Van Dyke's narrating. Severson's stage fright kept him from narrating it himself. And it was well received, and Van Dyke showed it around California the following summer. When Severson mustered out of the Army in August, he was faced with either live narrating the film or getting out of the business. Deciding to take the stage, he wrote and rehearsed the script, ran through the film repeatedly, practiced day and night, and when it came the night of the first show, it was some funky little social hall, only 125 people or something, and I panicked. He offered up a convenient bailout line. "You didn't come here to hear me talk, so let's have the lights and the action." And suddenly the place was dark. I had this horrible realization that the lights went out on my script, too. Severson roars. I couldn't believe it. All my best laid plans. But as the film rolled on, Severson found his voice. It was so easy. I hadn't been counting on picture-word association. And over time, things got better. I learned a lot about timing and how the audience is really just one person. The money he got from Surf went into new equipment and a second film, Surf Safari. It was 1959, the year Columbia Pictures released Gidget, starring Sandra Dee as the little girl with the big ideas, and Cliff Robertson as Kahuna, the bum with the beach shack. Dick Dale had taken up surfing and was beginning to work it into the music he made with his group the Deltones. Young people were flocking to the coast. Surf City, USA was under construction. Severson met Louise Steyer at the Hedge in Waikiki when she was a student at the University of Hawaii. He met her again at the showing of Surf Safari in San Francisco. On December 4th, 1959, Severson and Steyer were married in Honolulu. That year, he shot his third film, Surf Fever, the film he rates as his best. He was painting less. His art form was becoming cinematography. In addition to the movies, he burned 4 36 exposure rolls of black and white film over the winter of 1959 and 1960, sometimes setting up his still camera next to the Bolex. He used the stills and frame grabs from the film in a magazine-like booklet he sold to movie patrons for $1.25. He called it The Surfer, and it featured the same unique hand lettering style that he developed for his movies, along with bits of the wit and wisdom he'd accumulated in his first 26 years of life. Thus began the Surfer magazine. Later, it was Surfer Bi-Monthly, then simply Surfer. It was a good wave, and Severson wrote it well. Juggling magazines and movies, and then family as well, he interpreted a dispersed, outlaw subculture in a way that both exposed and sanitized it, but also birthed it into an entity that has become, ultimately, one of the most meaningful of meaningless pursuits on this substantially blue planet. While the magazine provided a vehicle for his own creative powers, Severson was careful not to monopolize it. Instead, he let it become a forum for surfers to do what they do best, which is, basically, show off and have fun. So Severson comes along and makes a movie, says Quig. It's got kids on small waves having the time of their life on the beach and all that. And I really feel strongly that he changed the direction of surfing. And when he came out with his magazine, I loved that. Getting kids laughing and having a good time. He broke that macho killer barrier. I've always looked up to John because I feel he brought on the change and let kids dominate the sport. 10 years down the line, Severson bailed on Surfer. He had had enough of magazines and advertisers and the Southern California boom he was so much a part of. He saw the writing on the wall when Richard Nixon bought the shoreline estate next door and renamed it the Western White House. I was surfing alone one day and Nixon was sunning on the beach and watching. I surfed in, a really smooth wave with lots of turns and off the lips right to the shore. There was a moment when I thought I might as well walk up and sit down and talk to him. I would tell him to stop the war. But in a flash, I realized it would be futile. He was just a cold fish politician. So I gave him the head and eyebrow raise, and he nodded back, and I moved on to another world. Severson made one last good film, Pacific Vibrations, a cautionary tale of surfing in those challenging times, then sold the business, moved to Maui, traveled along some backwaters not too far from the heart of darkness, and finally found an enduring life of artful existence on this south-facing shore. Now, in 1999, I sit in his house and marvel at this man's achievements, at the sheer quantity of beauty for which Severson has been personally responsible. It's utterly amazing, not only his personal production of films, photographs, fabric designs, magazines, homes — he built his last 3 — books, drawings, paintings, and wonderful lessons in prose, but the enormous beauty created by the many who have been inspired by him. I ask him about any spiritual understandings he's come to about his art and surfing and this life. "I don't know," he sighs. "The further along I get and the more I think about it, the less I think about it. I've come to a center and feel very comfortable where I am, in my relationship with the family, and better about relationships with people. I am comfortable, but I think there's a great mystery about all of this. It's so amazing. Everything put together in pieces, and yet you can see through it all. It's very mysterious to me. I don't know where we're going. I see there's so many ways to look at it, and when people try to articulate it, they get in trouble and they start fighting about it. And a long time ago, I decided it wasn't something you wanted to fight about. So I just go along, and I'm ready for the big sleep. Or I'm willing to go farther. I'm ready to cruise to the next step." He laughs his great young laugh, and his blue eyes dance beneath the gaze of the Buddha. Here he sits, the man who established the archetypes, who carved the icons on our collective consciousness, who synthesized the experiences of the surfers before him into a vision of surfing as a culture of art and action, where beauty can be found in every move, in every nuance of shifting life, and reality merges with fine art in the sanctuary of God's folding extravagance, the curling wave. Well, that's going to do it for today's episode. I hope you enjoyed this trip back through surf history and a look at the life and legacy of John Severson. If you enjoyed this episode, it'd mean a lot if you shared the podcast with a friend who loves surfing, surf culture, or just a good story from the past. If you'd like to help support the podcast, you can visit buymeacoffee.com/The Surfers Library. Your support helps cover the platform fees that keep the show going each month, so any little bit helps. Also, if you'd like to sponsor the podcast or have any story ideas or feedback for the podcast, please contact me on Instagram or at thesurferslibrary@gmail.com. I'm always looking for new ideas and new stories. Until next time, thanks for tuning in, and as always, keep your toes on the nose, your stoke high, and always, always, always support your local surf shop. I'll see you out in the lineup. The author of today's story is Drew Kampion. Drew Kampion is a former editor of Surfer, Surfing, Windsurf, and Wind Tracks magazines. He was editorial director for the Patagonia Clothing Company and associate editor for New Age Journal. He founded, published, and edited the Island Independent, an award-winning bioregional magazine in newsprint, serving the maritime rain shadow islands of Washington State. For his work with the Independent, he received first prize for editing a periodical with a circulation under 50,000. Until recently, Drew was the American editor of The Surfer's Path, the world's first green surf magazine. His episodic parody, The Teachings of Don Redondo, A Surfer's Way of Knowledge, as illustrated by artist Tom Theron, was a regular feature of the magazine. Drew is the author of The Book of Waves, The Art of Christian Reese Lassen, Stoked, A History of Surf Culture, The Way of the Surfer, The Lost Coast, Waves, From Surfing to Tsunami, Dora Lives, The Authorized Story of Mickey Dora, and Greg Knoll, The Art of the Surfboard. He was also editor of The Storm Rider Guide to North America. He is currently assisting Fernando Aguirre with his autobiography, Surf, Sex, and Sandals, The Latin Art of Mixing Business with Pleasure. and is at work on completing the story of Jack O'Neill, the inventor of the modern surfing wetsuit. Jack O'Neill, It's Always Summer on the Inside. Married with 2 children, Drew lives on an island in Washington state.